Woo. Welcome everyone to Flyover Footy. This is Phil, and we have two co-hosts with us tonight. I'm going to start with you, Santiago. How's it going, man?
No, great. Trying to stay cool with this crazy St. Louis weather lately, but I'm okay with the hot weather. But sometimes it's just too much. But yeah, if I have to pick, I would pick the hot weather over winter. So I'm okay with it. I'll live through it.
I was just thinking the same thing. I was like, this is the time where you really test. Would you rather have winter or hot weather? I always choose hot weather too. And so we're being real with ourselves, Santiago, winter and
Yeah.
summer.
Yep.
I like it. Matt, how's it going?
I would prefer spring and fall, and I would pay whoever needs paid to make that happen. But it's going
move
well.
to Seattle. That's kind of close to that. I don't know.
Yeah. Plus, I mean, tossing in the gloom and the rain and the clouds, I don't know. That's a rough trade-off.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But things are going well. I am in between two kind of trips, soccer related, kind of. So I got to go to the Sporting KC2 game last week, making a quick trip to Cincinnati to watch the FC Cincinnati game on Friday, tacking on the end of my wife's work trip before we actually get to watch City 2 back at home on Saturday.
Yeah, Rock Chalk Stadium, Rock Chalk Field,
Rock Chalk Park.
Like
Rock Choke Park, as
Brian
says.
There you go.
Yeah, I saw that.
Like you, that's painful for me to even say, much less attend a game at. But was it good?
It was a good game. Yeah, it was weird being there because I've never made the trip to Lawrence while I was in college or for anything Mizzou related before they stopped playing them in the Big 12. And so to travel to Lawrence for a St. Louis City 2 soccer game was kind of weird. Mm-hmm. But it was a great experience to watch our team go in there and win. I just don't have any desire to ever go back there again.
Matt, what was the ratio of CD2 fans versus Sporting KC2 fans?
Well, so Sporting KC2 had a pretty good turnout. I think it's similar to the old Swope Park days, though, where most of them were family.
Okay.
And so City 2, actually, Kyle Hebert's wife and friends were there. So they had a little family. I think Ian McGrain's aunt or uncle or something was there. They were, okay. I think there was a relation there. So there were some City fans and some City family members there. But I was pretty impressed with the number of Sporting KC2 fans, to be honest. Now, they were all pretty quiet throughout. So I think any noise you heard on the broadcast, I'm fairly certain came from us. But not bad.
The field looked nice on the stream. So that was kind of nice to see a decent stadium. Not all of them look all that good.
It was a decent field. There were some brown spots. Definitely not Josh McPherson level. But there was some. It was nice. It was overall okay.
Dropping groundskeepers' names on the podcast. Well done.
Yeah, the stream was really nice too. Like I was surprised with the quality. Yeah, best from all the games I have watched for MLS Next Pro has been the best so far, and they even had replays. So if I missed a nice play, I was able to see it. So yeah, it was good.
Yeah, I
really like it.
In the chat, Derek Gottman mentioned the camera was way better this time, and I think we owe to that being the game of the week. So I noticed.
That's true.
I saw the infamous ghost cam. I saw where that was.
I saw you posted that, yeah.
But they had at least two of the bigger cameras on both near corners, and then they had a main camera that I think was much higher quality than what exists at Rock Chalk. Mm-hmm. So I'm hopeful we get more of those game of the week, especially when we're away, because that's really the way you need to be watching this league.
Yeah, for sure.
We didn't have this on the outline, but I think that's a good transition because I did want to say that we are going to get with this new Apple and MLS deal, Apple Plus and MLS deal, a few MLS Next Pro games, but not all of them, right? I thought that was interesting, Matt. If you talk some more.
They were really, really vague on the MLS Next Pro, MLS Next dedication. So all they said games, I think select was the word they used. So they didn't say the full suite were going to be available like we were kind of assuming would happen with this new media deal. But if nothing else, I think that is alluding to maybe a higher quality for those select games, knowing they'll be on Apple's platform. And Apple is not one to just let anybody film in their backyard and be on their platform. Like, they have standards.
That's interesting. Yeah, I was thinking that it would be the same as this game, whatever the game of the week, but maybe they'll step it up some more. Maybe now is the time, now that we have a little bit more positivity to talk to the league about, maybe we can start asking questions about, hey, the feed was really good this week. Let's talk about it. Can we get more?
Keep that
Can we get
going.
replays? Yeah. Any other thoughts? I know you guys just talked about this last week, Matt, but if you guys have any other quick highlights about your favorite points about this before we move on.
The sporting game?
Sorry, the Apple deal. I didn't know if you wanted to say more about it.
Yeah, I mean, we were able to touch on it serendipitously last week with the timing. I've been thinking more about the original programming that they're sort of touting right now. And so knowing that it's going to be this MLS streaming service or streaming app within the Apple ecosystem, I think I'm kind of envisioning, at least in the long term, if not right off the bat, something more akin to what the NFL Network and MLB Network have going, where you're seeing more consistent daily programming, or I mean, weekly at the very least. But, thinking long term, it's a 10-year deal. I'm looking forward to what could be. And they alluded to it a little bit on like pods like MLS Today and Extra Time, where I would love to see those kind of guys, David Goss, Andrew Wiebe, and Matt Doyle, get their own kind of shows. If not them, then similar, where you're having a morning show maybe every single day dedicated to MLS. Like, to me, the possibilities are completely endless. It just depends on how all in MLS wants to go in producing all of this. So I think we could go from pretty quickly having absolutely nothing on TV besides your 2.5 hour game blocks on ESPN and Fox Sports 1 to potentially multiple live shows per day that and not to mention documentaries. So the thought of, again, looking what NFL has done, taking your cues from them. NFL Films is kind of the gold standard of documentaries and production companies. And so seeing what they've done on their YouTube channel a little bit with MLS, and Kalen Carr has done some pretty cool stuff traveling to different areas. I mean, there's again, the possibilities are completely endless. Yeah, Derek mentioned the Hard Knock style show. You focus on one team every single year to just build them up. That's how you can really start creating storylines, because that's what this league ultimately, to me, needs. We need storylines. We need to care about the players in the league to get more national eyes on each one of these teams. Like, I need to know and care about players that are playing for Real Salt Lake and LA Galaxy beyond just like the DPs who you sign, who you know from abroad. Like, they build up the players through these OG programming.
I also like that show that they play during the Champions League on Paramount. It's like the football something where they just kind of show whatever's hot at the moment, and they do a good preview show and stuff like that. I thought that was pretty good. Santiago, any last thoughts before we go back to the game? I almost forgot about it.
Last thoughts about the game or about Apple?
Apple.
Yeah, so Apple, obviously, for me, yeah, as Matt was saying, more exposure for the league, more programming, going from nothing to possibly daily shows or several times a week. And a lot of people, some people were complaining, well, you have to pay for it, so you don't get like the exposure you get now. But at the end of the day, like like ESPN and Fox, they're just broadcasting the game, so the exposure is not really there. So I think still is a good decision by MLS, and Apple will not only give it exposure here in the US, but worldwide. So that's important too.
I'm curious. I guess I'm going to ask you guys this question because, so I'm curious, since we get a season ticket, I have two thoughts on this. Since if we get a season ticket, we get a free, I guess we will get to watch the games for free. I'm wondering if we get all of Apple Plus with that, or if just the games.
I think just the games. So
Okay.
it's a subscription to the streaming service or the streaming app for MLS that we get for free.
Mm-hmm.
And and the way that it seems you're going to happen is, so let's say you have a Roku and you have the Apple TV app. So you would click on that Apple TV app, and then within that would be an MLS icon or whatever box or menu they have. Right now, it's similar to me to what Peacock did with the WWE Network.
Yeah.
That in my brain, that's how it's envisioning. And I know they folded that into the overall Peacock subscription, but it's like that. It's like what Showtime or PBS Kids is with Amazon, where you go into the Amazon app and you have access to Showtime or Paramount or those kinds of things. But I don't think it's going to have anything with our season ticket to do with Apple. But the cool thing is, when you talk about the exposure that Santi was mentioning, I'm totally on board with that line of thinking. What they're doing now isn't working. It's not growing the audience substantially with ESPN or Fox Sports. And so the notion that you're limiting eyes on the product or growth potential, knowing that we're shifting completely, if you look long term, from the linear eyes to the streaming services, and that's what this 10-year deal is doing. To me, you're able to kind of position yourself to future proof almost your product, and to continue with, we need eyes on this because ESPN is in 85 million households. That's just, it's the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over again, expecting a different result. Like, it's not working with those partners as your primary sources. So
sorry, on that thought, I just heard this thing about Jon Stewart is on Apple Plus. So it's a perfect comp. How people are talking about how Jon Stewart's ratings on Apple are not very good, but that on YouTube he's exploding, that his views are super high on YouTube. So it almost backs up what you're saying here, Matt, that wherever you're streaming, or if you're trying to get it to make it on cable TV, that's not necessarily a direct success anymore. If you're getting millions of clicks on YouTube, there's nothing wrong with that. In some cases, that could be better, could be more financially good as well. But the also, to kind of compare it to what you're saying about MLS shows and stuff, I'm just curious if they'll air it on Apple Plus or just let YouTube take it. I'm also curious what will happen to Jon Stewart, whether Apple Plus will keep him, because he's not that useful to them if his ratings on their show aren't that good. But maybe they dial in YouTube. I don't know. It's just this interesting story about how we all consume media right now in 2022.
Well, and the notion of ratings, I think, is somewhat becoming antiquated when it comes to these streaming services. I don't necessarily think that they're looking at individual ratings on a daily, weekly basis. They're looking at subscriptions. How much money are we taking in, and how much can they attribute MLS to that? And that's that last piece of what the overall deal is. It's a minimum of $2.5 billion over 10 years, averaging out to $250 million a year, but that's at the minimum. Apple has also apparently given MLS some kind of revenue sharing to, if you meet certain subscriber thresholds, then MLS gets an increased allotment. So there's skin in the game for MLS to help Apple grow as well. So that seems like a pretty legit partnership.
One more, I keep thinking of things to say. I'm sorry, we need to move along here, but USL just posted that they got 197,000 game views on ESPN Plus, which was more than
ESPN.
On ESPN. Yeah. Pardon me, which was more than MLS alone on that one channel. But they did pass them up if you add in FS1. But still, my goodness, USL is figuring out a model that works for them. Each game probably doesn't get as much, but you know what I mean. It's really interesting what and where we're getting our stuff. Last question I want to ask you two before we move on is, do you think like Bally Sports, has someone ever mentioned this on any other podcast or video that you've seen? Do you think like Bally and Yes are still going to have like cable broadcasts, or do you think they won't be able to? I'm curious if they'll double up in that way. Santiago is shaking his head no.
Yeah, from what I saw and read, basically there won't be any local broadcast anymore.
Okay.
There will still be, like, there's still an option, and that's something that was interesting to me. Like, you can still do radio, and it sounds like there will be an option that if you're watching the game on Apple Plus, you can put the audio from the local radio broadcast.
Yeah, which is a fantastic kind of middle ground to the notion that there will no longer be local broadcasts or local broadcasters. So taking a lot of the more famous, and I don't really know individual names, but I've heard Real Salt Lake and New York Red Bulls have really great announcers, and knowing that Apple is kind of going to have or MLS is going to have a centralized group of announcers. So like I think they were saying 14 teams at least. Plus, any local radio broadcasters are going to be able to kind of switch the audio while you're watching through the MLS streaming service, is kind of getting you that local flair that people are complaining about not having.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a really smart move on their part.
Love that. I think it's super cool. I think we've all turned on different audio at times when you just can't handle what you're listening to at the time.
Well, and two, that local notion is where people are disappointed there's not going to be local broadcasts anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I mentioned this last week, speaking strictly from the St. Louis perspective, our local broadcast, it's trash. Like Bally Sports isn't even airing on significant streaming services like YouTube TV and Hulu. So if you have those in the St. Louis area, you don't get to watch the Cardinals and Blues now. They're essentially completely blacked out unless you're borrowing passwords or pirating or something like that. So
VPN.
Right, but that would be where you would go to have the local broadcaster in St. Louis. The idea that you're going to get something on KSDK or KMOV or Fox 2, that's antiquated. Like there haven't been dedicated broadcasts on over-the-air channels locally in years. So to me, we're not missing anything in St. Louis by not having Bally a part of this.
Yeah, Derek also said the Bally app is trash, and I've heard that from more than just Derek for sure. But let's go back. Thank you guys for indulging me there. I had a lot of thoughts on that and questions. But let's move on to the game. St. Louis City 2 goals. Sporting KC 2 1 goal. Both from Schneider on the St. Louis side, but Vasquez scored for KC first, so it was a bit of a nail biter in that way. I didn't catch the game. I didn't catch the stream either in this case, so I'm relying on you guys. Santiago, I'd like to start with you, and then Matt can sweep up anything we missed.
Yeah, so the game started really well for St. Louis City too. Had two or three options, and it's interesting because we talked during our flyover forecast. We talked a little bit about Sporting KC starting an MLS goalie, and that didn't happen. They actually had a goalie that it was his first professional game, and he handled it really well. He like St. Louis had three options. He was able to stop those, and it looked like St. Louis was going to sweep Sporting KC 2, and all of the sudden, like minute 14, 15, long pass behind the back of City's defense, and Julian Vasquez score. And then, like 2 minutes later, Sporting KC almost scored again. There was like some confusion between Yarrow and our goalkeeper, and he saved it like right on the line. And things look really like St. Louis was trying but not creating many options, and went to halftime 1-0, and it didn't look like St. Louis could find a way. The City too could find a way. Started the second half a few options, but it's still like it didn't look like they were gonna be able to break Sporting KC2's defense, and then all of a sudden, 2 goals in 2 minutes. As you said, Snyder scoring a brace. The second one was a PK, but it's still St. Louis turned the game around quickly, and from there, Sporting KC didn't create much, and St. Louis was able to get the result. But we have our own flyover footy reported over there. So Matt, what did you see there?
A lot of what you said. So it started off, St. Louis was clearly on the front foot and clearly taking it to them as we thought they would. And the first goal, I think, it came out of nowhere truly, because it was created so quickly, and it beat our back line so quickly with a through ball. Usually when we give up something like that, it's over the top. I was kind of taken aback as it was happening, seeing that through ball placed so perfectly. So they had the ball on their end about halfway through their zone, and it was just a perfectly placed. I don't think this guy could do it again if he tried. Through both of our guys, Akil and Max, were on him, through them, through Yarrow and DeRosa, and then perfectly placed to where it was just it was a 1v1 at that point. And Vasquez was clearly their best player. He was clearly working the ref a lot during that game, and as fans, we tried to let him hear it quite a bit. But I mean, credit to him. That's a pro move. And I think that his actions, Vasquez, is one of the things that led to yellow cards at the end of the game for our coaches. Lutz and Hackworth both received yellow cards for basically not sitting down when the fourth official asked them to. So I think that hurt us and our game plan for a little while. The Heat didn't help because by the time they scored their first goal, just 14 minutes in, I feel like we were so much on the offensive that just kind of took the wind out of our sails. And we had opportunities before that, Doling, Armstrong, and we just couldn't finish. That the beginning of the game was typical City 2, where we're pressuring, we're getting shots. We're not getting too many shots on target, but we're getting a lot of shots. Nothing's falling in. And that happens to us an awful lot. We ended this game with 26 shots to their 6. And, we only came away with 1 goal in the course of action. So, or in the course of play in the field. So I think that speaks to a lot right there, where we still cannot find consistency in putting the ball in the net and on target a lot. But once that first goal was scored by SKC, it took the wind out of our sails. We were hot. We were bothered. We had a tough time finding that offensive, and they found their they found their sweet spot, and they had some momentum going, and they didn't let up really until halftime. And then we did come back out at half, and I feel that the Carson Gibbs substitution is what really led to a big difference maker. And so coming in the 63rd minute for Ezra Armstrong, to me, you could just see it right away. That was the point where there are tired legs out there because it was so hot. They had to take 2 hydration breaks, 1 in each half. And Carson Gibbs is just out there and immediately running all over the place. And he's disrupting them, and he's creating that spark that, to me, led to both goals. Directly led to the second goal because he was the one who was fouled in the box.
Yep.
But even that first goal, where it was kind of everybody's in the box, you're having our Kwame play the ball out to Celio on the right side, who gave a cross in, and it was more or less just a deflection. Wasn't even a straight hit, I feel, from Max to put that ball in. But I think Carson causing a lot of that disruption and fast-paced movement led to a lot of the open spaces that we had. And the second goal in particular, where his speed to get to the ball first in the box that Doling laid off for him, and then an immediate quick move that caused him to be fouled, was the difference maker in that second goal. So I attribute that goal as much to him as I do Schneider for completing the PK. And he stayed with it the rest of the match. If it wasn't for Schneider's 2 goals, I would have nominated him for man of the match because of the effort that he put in. And that isn't too surprising because he's been in really great form the past few matches. I think he started 2 out of the last 4 matches now, and he's played in all 4 of our last matches. And so I'm looking, we'll look ahead to Real Monarchs soon, but I'm looking to him to carry that forward, and I would love to see him get another start. And I think from the analysis perspective, one of the really interesting things to me is how this game reinforced that we love to play the ball to the left side of our offense so much. And we've talked about the way that our back line often shifts, and whether it's Kwame or Ezra on that left back role, we usually push them up a lot higher than Ben DeRosa does on the right side. And so it oftentimes looks like we're running a 3 center back form because our left back is just pushed so high. And I think that was an interesting thing to look at in this game because we had Ezra Armstrong playing that left mid role, and Celio Pompeu shifted from his usual left side over to the right side. And I felt like Ezra was much involved in the action, at least in the first half, until he was subbed off in the 63rd. But he had a lot of shots on goal. He had a lot of the balls being played through to him from Kwame. And Celio, he did make the best of his opportunities. Obviously, he can play with that cross he had on the right side. So I think it opened my eyes a little more about his flexibility in our ability to put Ezra out there on the left when it's necessary. Diaz was hurt. Vitor Diaz didn't play, wasn't on the roster because he was hurt. I don't know what his injury is, but we're wondering if he's going to play this week. And knowing that Ezra Armstrong has the experience on the left-hand side and Celio clearly can shift over to the right when Juan plays that center mid role, that to me opened my eyes a little bit to the possibilities and flexibility that we had that we really hadn't seen too much of, almost out of necessity. And then the last thing that I noticed is we played this game in the heat with a very shallow bench. And I believe it was because all of our academy players are occupied with MLS Next Cup playoffs that begin this weekend. And so I would look for that to continue. But I think the subs that we made, almost emptying our bench with Carson Gibbs, AJ, Sergio Rivas, and Dita Armstrong there at the very end, looking to what those guys were able to bring in the second half for strong legs. That after we scored those 2 quick goals, I think gave us the additional momentum and oomph to keep Sporting KC2 on their back feet.
Yeah, fitness has definitely played a part in every single one of our games in one way or another, even in a negative way, right? When we played Minnesota and everyone was tired and heavily rotated, that was definitely something we noticed. And I love that you pointed out the positioning that clearly the coaching staff, or maybe through practice and habitual playing there, that, Juan Kuzain likes to be on the right cutting in. Ezra likes playing the left. Pompeu likes playing on the left, and not having that 10 or second striker that's usually there. Diaz, it's, everyone felt a little bit off and looked a little bit off, and it was kind of strange that one of our younger players coming in, Carson, kind of running his butt off, was the final puzzle piece to kind of get that goal in there.
So and it really did seem cool. It really did seem like Carson kind of subbing in for Ezra, put Celio back on the left side, put Juan back on the right side. Carson kind of fell in behind Doling in almost not a 2-striker formation, but he was clearly playing underneath Doling. That kind of sub put those other 2 back in what I feel is more their natural positions, and so the rest of the game seemed a little smoother with that front midline.
The Pompey on the right thing is interesting. I bet he doesn't like it, is all I'm wondering, but that doesn't matter. I didn't get much out of this because I didn't see the whole thing, but stats were insane. Matt, you mentioned the shots. It's ridiculous. Every single stat column is like 2, 3, 5 times better than the other. This is a game that, like, it looks like we should have won 5-0 or 5-1 on a lucky shot. But that said, do we want to trust the XG added up from MLS Next Pro? I don't know. So that's my caveat, right? But the XG was like 2, a little over 2. So I found that interesting, even though we put up a lot of shots, that the XG wasn't super high. Now, again, caveat. One game, 1 XG stat. So don't put too much into that. We seem to come out winning most of these games, and that's a stat in itself. So that is that. The other thing that I wanted to say is it Vazquez that scored the goal?
Yeah.
Yes. He's the only supplemental homegrown player on that starting 11, at least. So I thought that was also interesting that everyone else was not. So the little ringer goal was real. There's something to that.
And they only had one other substantial threat, and it was Colin Fernandez that we had talked about last week, and he didn't start. He came in as a sub. And so
I love Colin.
Yeah. Yeah, I love him when he's not playing for Kansas City.
Exactly. Yeah, I've followed him everywhere he's gone because I really liked him in St. Louis. I liked him before St. Louis. But let's move on. Let's kind of brush through these a little faster than we have been. We're about at the halfway mark, so we still got plenty of time. But João Klaus put an interesting tweet out. Maybe he's headed our way, Matt. You want to get a little more in depth with that?
Seems pretty likely. I noted before we started recording that the next time we have a full show, we are likely to see all of our MLS players have arrived or being starting to arrive in St. Louis. Jacques Klaus, in particular, had an Instagram post last Friday with a picture of a treadmill and a note that there's 15 days to go with a little airplane emoji. And so that would put him on course for St. Louis on July 2nd. So that's exciting to know that he may be arriving here about as early from a registration transfer window timeframe as possible. I'm under no illusions that he's going to immediately be slotted in. We have a game on the 2nd. He's not playing on the 2nd. There's no way he plays against Rapids 2 on the 2nd. But I think that's when he can start getting some minutes in on the training field, see how his fitness is, see how he's meshing with some of the players. Maybe a sub opportunity here in early July might not be too overly optimistic to think about.
Not at all. No. I'm sure Dolan could even use a rest. I imagine he may not want it, but my goodness, that man's been going strong, legs of iron. Really love it. That'll be interesting. A lot of our other quickly, and I don't think we're like studied up on this, so don't take it too strongly, but I think almost all our other interesting players like Selmir Pedro, Ostrak, Joachim Nielsen, I think they've all gotten knocks at the end of their season. Is that correct, Matt? I feel like we've been talking about all those guys. Yeah. So we may not be seeing them as soon as the others, even though we could use some reinforcements on the back line, if something were to happen with the short bench going on. I don't know what you guys think.
Yeah, we know Pedro and Ostrak picked up some knocks that prevented them from potentially playing in some of their last games with their former clubs. Nielsen was the most concerning. The fact that he picked up a knock for Sweden and then came into that match that he picked up the knock with a knock. So he carried something in. He was able to start. He was able to play, and then they had to sub him out for another undisclosed. So we're not sure if it was re-aggravating or if it was a brand new injury. But we do understand that it's some kind of muscle injury. So the hope is, he has all the time in the world before our MLS season. So there's no concern for me on any of these guys to be in shape for that. It's just when are they going to be able to take the field for City 2? And I think that obviously I would assume everybody is of the opinion that they should take their time, get healthy, don't rush anything because there is zero reason to rush back for City 2.
Yeah, I agree. There is no reason to rush. And I remember Coach Hackworth said, for them, like they just finished their season. Even if they are coming here in July, like they basically have to go through preseason. So I don't think we're going to see them early in July, any of them. Maybe we may see some get some minutes. If I have to put my money on it, maybe that July 22nd game against North Texas. But even I think that's very unlikely. Maybe early August is when we will see some of them starting to get some minutes, and it will be interesting to see how the team manages their minutes. I don't think they're gonna go 90 minutes. Maybe they will play a half or come in as subs, and maybe towards the end of the season we will see more of them. But I think the team is gonna take it easy and make sure they get acclimated to the team, and it's gonna give them time. So we'll at some point we're gonna see them, but I think it's gonna take a while.
Totally agree. And that August 6th game is interesting because if you look to the competitive nature of the league, the last two matches we have in July are against North Texas and the Tacoma Defiance, who are the top two teams or two of the top 3 or 4 teams in the West. And if you're looking at inform an existing team playing, and so bringing all of our current guys together to have those big matchups, I think would be a really smart way to approach it. Those who are in form and used to each other, and then you have a little bit of a, maybe you can let off the gas. It's a kind of that afterburner game against Chicago Fire 2, where we have already beaten them 5-0. This is the home matchup. So they're one of the bottom barrel teams in the league. It might provide that low stress in comparison opportunity to maybe get some of those guys their first few minutes.
Yeah, I don't know what the staff and the players think, but I still have like Minnesota burning a hole in the back of my heart. I want to get them back. That was a bad one.
July 10th. July
yeah.
10th.
And even so, we were talking about how Volmar might be filling in depending on, who's going where and when. And so part of me is almost still more excited to get academy kids acclimated to this level, because Volmar still may not quite be there, or we're not sure what that is. But I want those guys ready for MLS in the next 2-3 years at most. The best of them, of course, not just any of them. But yeah, I mean, I'd be just as excited to see an academy kid as I would to see Nielsen on the field. And maybe that's just me, hipster Phil. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm definitely of that opinion too. I want to see, and I mentioned this last week, I want to see more Aaron Hurd. I want to see more Fritz Volmer. Yeah. Those two in particular, I think, have the biggest potential to play next year. Hurd more or less via reputation, because he's incredibly young, and we haven't seen a whole lot out of him for the MLS Next Pro side. Volmer has had some decent success, some more minutes, I think, than Hurd. So of the academy players, those are the two that I'm looking at. And I do wonder, to your point, though, as you finish out the City 2 season, you have that one match at the very end of the year that could or could not be at Centene Stadium. Do you look to bring in some of those MLS players as not just getting them minutes, but as a marketing opportunity to get everybody excited as you finish out the year? Because in the Gen Pop world, those are the guys who are probably going to be moving the needle more than the academy players.
I think you almost have to. That's a good call there. Another thing I was thinking about was the U20 CONCACAF Gold Cup being played right now, and how, clearly we don't have a player in that quite yet. And so, I was thinking of Hurd and some other guys who I would love to see in that competition in the next couple of years. But also comparing that to the fact that USA has by far the most pro minutes in their U20 team than any other CONCACAF country. That says something, right? They're valuing that, rightfully so. And so our guys got a long way to go, right? How many academy kids are going to, rack up the pro minutes of these U20 players on the City club? So that's something to aspire to and hope for, as fans and as people in the club organization, I'm sure too. But that kind of leads us to another opportunity for that age group, is a UPSL team being developed for St. Louis City 2. UPSL is a U23, the fourth tier of the United States soccer pyramid, sometimes fifth tier, depending on how you want to look at it. I think they have Pro Rel, right? So that's interesting too. That's something I meant to look up before we started talking about it, which level of UPSL we're going to be playing in. We may not know yet, but this is super cool. This is super interesting. And for me, extremely unexpected for a lot of reasons. Santiago, do you want to lead us off on this one?
Yeah, as you said, totally unexpected, but it's still another great way for the club to give opportunities to St. Louis made players, and the the fact that they will, if they play in this team, they will keep their eligibility for college, and all of that is important too. And they will get exposure to, it's fourth, fifth year, but it's still competitive, and will give them exposure to playing against other teams from other places within the country. And who knows? It's part of the could be part of the path to professional for some players. Maybe some will start at the UPSL level, maybe then move to City 2, and then later on moved to St. Louis City SC. So yeah, it's another opportunity to give local players opportunities to play, to show their talent. But yeah, I was really surprised with this one because for me it came out of nowhere.
It was kind of filling in a gap that we didn't know existed.
Yeah.
When they first started City 2, they posited it as bridging the gap between the academy and the first team, and the release for this club says it's providing a pathway between the MLS Next U17 and City 2. So
Hmm.
it sounds so besides the open trials, which is kind of why the news broke, is they're having pre-college open trials here in a couple weeks, and it's sounding like it's going to give opportunities for our academy players who maybe either need more time to make their own decision, want more time to have eyes on them to see if they are really more or less good enough for the pro level, and to continue immediately towards City 2. Um, Even guys like who are top tier in the U17s who are playing for City 2 under amateur contracts could give them opportunities because, best of my knowledge, like Josh Mayer right now hasn't started college. So he's maintaining his eligibility by playing for City 2 under an amateur contract.
Hmm.
Well, when his college time comes, that he'll have to have made that decision. And so I guess this for this next crop, so U17s that maybe are aging out of eligibility for that team, maybe some of them shift over to this UPSL team in the fall, and maybe we see some of them in City 2 next year. Maybe we see some of them go off to college. So it really does seem like it's focused around the people aspect and nurturing the holistic person that Lutz has always talked about, where they're wanting to kind of grow people and not just grow soccer players. And so giving them this opportunity as much as giving the club another component to their overall structure. It's really interesting.
To delve more into what you said, which is there's a gap we didn't realize existed. To me, it's more than that. It's more, I think it's the club is willing to invest and put money into something because I think they still think there's kids falling through the cracks, that St. Louis has more to offer that they may not be catching, and they're scared, that they might miss out on someone. I think that's, to me, that's a possibility, at least, of what they're thinking. I really hope that's true. I believe that it's true. And we haven't even gotten all these little, coaching and league structures thrown around the entire city yet. And so I'm just so excited for this network we have coming in the future, to see it play out and hopefully bear some major fruit for our club and just for the St. Louis kids in general, really, the players, soccer players of St. Louis. I'm with you, Matt. I do think they're going to do a good job developing these kids in all ways, not just in soccer. Let's move on to the Real Monarchs game that's coming up. Not something to get too worried about. I would say it was one of our most dominant games of the season last time, but it wasn't a gimme. Also, 0 wins, 10 losses, and 2 draws for this team. So, I think I'm mostly watching to see whether Tomas Gomez comes and plays this. Otherwise, I'm not going to get terribly excited about the matchup. But again, it's not a gimme, right? Any thoughts from you, Matt?
Nothing's a gimme, but this could be one of those trap games. But I don't think our club falls into that because in order for it to be a trap game, I feel you have to take the opposition too lightly, and we don't seem prone to that.
Mm-hmm.
And so even playing this month has told me that, if nothing else. So the slew of teams, Rapids 2 notwithstanding, that we've played in June have been pretty bottom barrel, lower tier of the standings. And we've played each one of those matchups like we're playing Tacoma Defiance or Dynamo 2 is who we started with. So I'm not so much worried about it being a trap game. I just want to see more consistency, and this is an opportunity to provide that. Where we talked about in the SKC matchup, 26 shots, 7 shots on goal, 1 goal in open play. And those are not good numbers. I mean, yes, it does prove that we have our mindset and our game plan is working, and we're disrupting and we're creating chances, but they're not meaningful chances by and large. They're not enough meaningful chances. I want to see more shots on goal. I want to see more possession more or less, because I think this is an opportunity to kind of put our foot down more so than we did against Chicago even. And so I'm looking for better finishing overall, regardless of who plays, whether it's Doling or Juan or Celio finding the back of the net. I want 4 or 5 goals out of this, which I think isn't honestly too much to ask for, because you just said it. The Real Monarchs are a joke of a team in this league this year. Like they're really, really bad. And it's hard to understand really why they're so bad. I haven't done too much investigation on why they're so bad, but I really think it has to do with that organization as a whole right now, where the owner was forced to sell the entire thing. The MLS took over ownership of their team. Yes, they had kind of a sporting director acting in that role, but they couldn't bring in anybody. Their organization below the MLS level just seems like it's a mess, because this isn't the Real Monarchs we know from USL. It's kind of absurd to me and how embarrassing they are in this league. And I don't see anything changing with that. In fact, there's one player on their team who even worried me in the slightest sense, and that's Pedro Fonseca. And he's their super draft pick. This year's super draft, 53rd overall selection. He has 4 goals on the year, but he hasn't played since May 25th because of an injury. So if he plays, it could be different. They may have a little offensive spark, but they only have 8 goals total on the season, and Pedro Fonseca has 4 of those before May 25th.
And most of those goals,
yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. Most of those goals they scored at the beginning of the season.
Yes. Yeah, they're an embarrassment lately. They weren't awful to start the season off. They were at least slightly competitive, but it's hard for me to really like go too in depth about like the matchup, because there really isn't that much of a matchup. You look at the goals against, the differentials. The only thing they're beating us in overall this year are a number of yellow cards, and they lead the league in yellow cards. This could be a really dirty matchup that we have to contend with. They could be flying all over the field with the pressure that we like to put on. So they don't have any clean sheets. They are terrible with their attacking assists. I mean, they don't create chances with the players that have been playing this past month. So I really don't want to say like we should stomp them, but we should stomp them.
Yeah, they have lost their last 8 games. That loss to St. Louis was the first game of that 8-game losing streak. And one thing I noticed, obviously, when you look at their roster and their lineups, one thing I noticed is that they have more. I kind of stopped counting, but they have at least 24, 25 players that had played in games. And their roster is pretty large. So I don't know if it is because they have problems in their structure and are trying to figure out what to do, or maybe they are trying it more as a developmental team and giving opportunities to more players. But yeah, like the roster had a lot of players, and a lot of players starting games and with significant minutes. So yeah,
like crazy.
Yeah, a lot of rotation. So on paper, St. Louis shouldn't have any problems, but that trap game is always in the back of my mind. But just thinking about what Matt said, like St. Louis has treated all these games very seriously, putting their main guys, and just thinking about the MLS Next guys being on the playoffs. Your roster. The roster you're going to have available for their game is going to be smaller. So even if you wanted to do some rotation, you're still going to have some of your main guys. So it should be a win for St. Louis. And you never want to be the team that loses to one of those teams on a bad streak. So I think St. Louis is going to treat the game very seriously and take care of business on Saturday.
With the form that we're in, it would be a shocking drop off to lose to this caliber of team. And to your point of their rotation, they've played 12 games and they have 0 players that have played all 12 games.
Mm-hmm.
One player has played 11, has started all 11 for them, and that's Neidiger, and he's one of the players to look out for. But so Kyle Hebert leads the league in minutes played per game because he's played every single minute for us. They only have, and that's with 1,080 minutes, right? So 1,080 minutes over 12 games. They have one player who's played more than 900 minutes, and that's the same player. They have 4 players total who have played more than 600 or 700 minutes. So they've rotated a massive amount. So they don't have, it seems, continuity to their lineup like we've seen St. Louis and a lot of these other teams have. And it's clearly impacted their ability to create any kind of pressure.
Yeah, you mentioned not wanting to be that team that loses to Real Monarchs at this point in the season after that eight-game streak. I'd also hate to be a guy like Fonseca in the super draft being pulled to a team like Real Monarchs and being forced to play with them. Clearly, he wasn't surrounded by quality. He was just stepping up and making plays. That's really sad. I think just to take a second to think about where our St. Louis, our SLU players, and where they ended up in this league. They got lucky in a lot of ways, to be at North Texas. Orlando's not doing great, but Lynn is like second or third in the league in goals, and he doesn't even play for them every game. So our guys in St. Louis have been taken care of so far playing in this league and playing for 2 teams in MLS. But man, you could get stuck at Real Monarchs. Things could be bad. Talk about
I guess
changing your life,
Yeah, they don't have many players to watch out for. Fonseca is the player, so if he's in the starting lineup, he'll be number 77. So that's a player to watch out for. The only other 2 that I really had that even crossed my mind as a potential offensive threat are Christian Neidiger, number 40, who has 11 shots on goal this season, 1 assist, and Tyrone Mondi, number 80, who has 14 shots and is second on their team in goals with 2. So not a whole lot of players to watch out for that are really proven themselves to be dangerous, but those would be the 3.
Good stuff, guys. You came with the heat on that one. Confidence and stats. It's a good combination for a podcast. Let's touch on Mastermind being declared as the official music director or whatever it is of MLS of St. Louis City SC. And this is near and dear to my heart because I do love Mastermind. I do listen to them. I do appreciate local St. Louis music in all genres and in all ways. And this guy is just like the perfect pick for that kind of a role. He is a kind person. I have a friend that worked with him. He's a musician, and they did some songwriting together just shortly. But, a guy like that could have an ego. In fact, I'd say a lot of local artists that make it sort of big, like Mastermind has, will end up becoming super cocky and don't want to talk to anyone. They're not open-minded. This guy is the exact opposite. And he's just like a hard-working, grinding musician, songwriter, producer who cares about his craft and he cares about St. Louis and seems like a good dude. I can't speak to exactly what he's like, but I know he's friendly online. He's very responsive if you do want to talk to him. So really love it. And I love just the move itself, which, Matt, I'm sure you can talk about. But the fact that, I don't think any other teams in MLS has done this. I know there's DJs for teams. I know Nashville does the guitar thing, which makes a lot of sense and it's super cool. But this is different. This is way further than that. And it feels like a very big cultural declaration, like many other we've seen already from this club. And I'm sure this won't be the end of it either. But it's a nice trend. I really enjoy it.
Well, with the name of his role, the director of musical experience,
thank you.
I'm interested to see how he weaves everything he's doing into mostly the match day experience, but beyond that too. So you mentioned the DJs before games or the guitar riff in Nashville, those little isolated moments. Well, it truly seems like he's going to be bringing not like an STL flair, but incorporating local STL artists in addition to probably some more mainstream things that happen here and there before the game, maybe during the game, halftime, and after the game for sure. But making that as organic as it seems like they've shown the overall experience to be important. I'm excited to see how that ends up playing out and in practicality, because there are a lot of different options. And with that East Plaza, there are some very tangible options that exist right outside the stadium, and that entire district, more or less. So there are a lot of abilities to kind of create musical components throughout the entire area, all day, non-game days. It's going to be interesting to see how he puts it all together.
And you talk about St. Louis players not falling through the cracks and creating this team. Like, I love John Hamm. I love Pam from The Office. I forgot the actress's name, but like, it is super cool to be able to like, Mastermind's going to pull up these guys we've never heard of, and they're going to be so talented and so interesting. It's going to be like, it's not going to be like Lollapalooza. It's going to be like Tiny Desk concert kind of thing, kind of stuff coming from St. Louis. And I'm really excited about that kind of stuff. The East Plaza too, really good shot. I would love to see music there, no matter what kind of event it is. And he's going to be the guy to kind of be able to incorporate some interesting cultural stuff in that way. Which is also, when I did the tour, that was my favorite thing. The East Plaza, like, I'm just thinking, I don't know. I don't know if I don't think most people said that, but that was my favorite thing in the tour. Do you guys want to talk about the World Cup? Let's talk about the World Cup and get out of here, because we're going to be able to go see the World Cup in 2026 in Kansas City, Missouri, right?
Kansas City, Missouri.
Missouri. So I'm super excited. I've thought about just parking myself there and quitting life until from the beginning to the end, right? So I didn't know, Santiago, if you wanted to kind of lead us off on some thoughts on KC having the World Cup in 2026.
Yeah, for sure. Exciting, because it's the closest city to St. Louis. Just 3.5, 4 hours, and it also opens the possibility of, with all the world-class facilities St. Louis City SC is building downtown, I bet there will be a team base here. One of the teams playing in Kansas City will probably pick St. Louis as its base, will be training here. So that will be really good for St. Louis too. And obviously, yeah, like as I just said, like, yeah, Kansas City really close to St. Louis. But as I started to look at the other cities, like Kansas City is like kind of just there, like in the middle, but not close to other cities. So just thinking about, and yeah, that's 4 years from now, but just thinking about how will people manage to go to Kansas City and then go to other World Cup cities. Like the closest will be Dallas, which is like a 9-10 hour drive, but maybe there will be different alternatives for transportation in 4 years. But yeah, I'm excited about Kansas City, having a city close to St. Louis, and maybe having some friends come from Colombia or from other cities in the United States and stay here in St. Louis and then travel to Kansas City and to other cities. It's exciting. It's just an opportunity to go to World Cup games, if we are able to get tickets. I think that's going to be really difficult in 2026, but we'll see. We'll see what happens.
When has it ever been a problem to get national team tickets for cheap?
Right.
What country?
As long as you don't give
here, Matt?
Yeah, as long as you don't give U.S. Soccer control over the ticket prices, we might be okay.
God,
I'm of the same opinion though. I'm super excited. 3-hour drive to get to Arrowhead. They're going to be doing $50 million of improvements to Arrowhead, which is a Kansas City problem now to figure that out. And in a perfect world, yeah, it would have been fun if St. Louis could have put in a bid. For those who don't know, you have to have a 40,000 seat stadium at least to qualify to host World Cup matches. Toronto is in fact having to do massive seat increases for BMO Field, where Toronto FC plays, in order to meet that requirement. So that'll be interesting to watch. But nothing exists in St. Louis, and so I think it's nice that if you look at the World Cup cities, Kansas City is almost on an island in the Midwest. They listed the Midwest or central cities, and Atlanta was one of the central cities they listed, which was absurd.
Yeah.
That just goes to show, like, Minnesota didn't put in a bid. Nashville, Cincinnati didn't get it. So, Cincinnati's not really Midwest, but they would be the other closest
Did
to
Chicago
us.
apply?
Chicago pulled out. They didn't actually They didn't actually submit the bid. They didn't want to go through the infrastructure improvements or, down payments, whatever that would have to occur. So 3 hours. I mean, it's hard to beat that when you take a step back from like a bummer of St. Louis not even being in the conversation. It's 3 hours away to get to World Cup games. It really is a once in a lifetime thing. You can think of it. Most of us probably know some people in Kansas City. I've already talked. I was in Kansas City last week, and I told the people we were hanging out with, I was like, so yeah, we're gonna need this room for 3 months. And I'll let you know later on when the matches will be. So,
real close.
But the other thing that I'm even more, well, not even more, but still excited about is what Santi mentioned. The fact that with Kansas City being on an island almost to the clubs they're hosting, if they're going to host 4 teams, you figure that not all 4 will be training in Kansas City. 1 or more are likely to be utilizing the features in the district that St. Louis has. World-class stadium, grass practice facilities. This entire area will have, hotels built up around it to house them. I think it's going to be a ancillary boom for St. Louis that might not come into focus for quite a while. But knowing and looking at some of the other World Cup sites and where teams have trained, it is very rarely where teams will train. Every single team will train in the city that they're playing in. They'll train in facilities surrounding it. As long as there are adequate ways and quick ways to get transportation to the city that you will be playing in, which St. Louis has with Lambert as a puddle jump over to MCI. I think it's a no-brainer that St. Louis will get some kind of a national team training here.
I wish there was like a private train, like if you could, because the track's there, and they just canceled yet another. We're down to 1 trip to KC a day on the Amtrak instead of 2 from St. Louis. So, the track's there. It could be used. It's sad. I hope they improve that before then, because honestly, Highway 70 is going to be just an absolute mess. I mean, during those situations, I can't imagine driving there for a game from St. Louis. It's going to be gross. So we'll see how it goes, though.
Well, the good news is Arrowhead's on this side of Kansas City, so we don't actually have to go to downtown and beyond.
That's true.
We don't have to cross the state line to get to
the football.
Maybe
we get off at Lee Summit or something like that. I feel like there's a stop right before. So
yep,
interesting stuff to think about. We just hit the 1 hour mark. I'm going to call it there, boys. It's been fun talking to you. Oh, Matt, I missed something.
One other
thing. Face like I missed something, and you really want to say it.
We did.
That's why the video is super important. Yeah. Other quick plug. So the Real Monarchs game this Saturday at Ralph Cordy Stadium. I believe it's a 6 p.m. start, but the club recently updated their Facebook page to denote 7 p.m. So check your local listings for that one. Whatever time it ends up starting at, it is Pride Night. So
thank you. Yeah.
We're capping off June with City's official Pride Night. Every club has one game they designate. And they have touted players will be wearing some kind of local Pride type shirt or locally created, which is different, I feel, and worth calling out, because so far we've seen the Fanatics site have the more or less generic rainbow colored St. Louis City shirt. We've hoped that the club and other clubs would do something a little more intentional and local and provide proceeds in a more meaningful and direct way. And I feel that this is kind of sort of, if not exactly what we've asked for. So be on the lookout for some kind of merch to be able to buy. And I think it's supporting local artists. I don't know what, if any, proceeds are going to local causes, but I do know that it is the last opportunity, I believe, last game in June.
Yep.
So last opportunity to make a donation or a pledge to the St. Louligans Pride Raiser campaign, which is supporting the Metro Trans Umbrella Group in St. Louis. And so far, based on, it's a pledge per goal. And so if you haven't heard of it, haven't seen it, stl.prideraiser.org to make a pledge, and per goal donation. Right now, total through all of the pledges and donations, we're up to over $4,000 that have been pledged to support Metro Trans Umbrella Group. And this is the last game. So the club's going all out for Pride Night. The Luligans have been going all out all month plus. So get involved and help out those who are unduly marginalized and continue to be. So it's important. And I think the club has shown a commitment, dedication to it, and we should as fans.
Yeah, I love the way the club is committing to this. As Matt said, exclusive Pride T-shirt designed by St. Louis made artist Adam Kuhn, and just looking at the release from the club, the proceeds are going to the official Major League Soccer partner, which is You Can Play project. But it's still helping a good cause. The city players will be wearing those Pride T-shirts and. There will be other events before the game, and Pride Racer, last chance to make a pledge. And just thinking about these Real Monarchs, we may have a lot of goals scored, so that would be good for the Pride Racer campaign.
Well said. Thank you guys for not letting me miss that. I appreciate that, and you guys really killed it with the details again. Pride Raiser is a good one to go with for sure on that. And I am excited to see, I'll be looking to see where the club is going to be sending those proceeds for sure as well, because that's vital, right? I think there's another MLS team that is pretty obviously not sending it straight to a nonprofit of any kind when they sell their Pride Night t-shirts and scarves and stuff. Or if they are, they're not announcing it. So that's important. We got to make sure the money's going where it should be. And I don't really have any worries about it. I'm just curious to see where it goes. That's it for us, everyone. Thanks for listening. We'll be hitting you up with another flyover forecast next week. Hope you've been enjoying that series. I know I have. And we'll be talking to you then. Bye, everybody.
Bye.